Yep, you read the title of this video. You know why we're here today. I'm not trolling, I'm not goofing around, I'm not doing nothing. I genuinely believe that Helldivers 2 is a better game overall than Space Marines 2. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Heretic! Hold on, just give me a chance to explain myself and how I arrived at this conclusion. First off, let me just say that I don't think that Space Marines 2 is a bad game. I actually think that Space Marines 2 is a very good game. I do like it and I enjoy playing it. But in anticipation for Space Marines 2, I saw more and more people using the anticipation to throw shade at Helldivers 2. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that some of that wasn't warranted. The devs are making some stupid decisions over the past few months. But if you were to ask me right now, today, why someone prefers Space Marines 2 over Helldivers 2, my genuine response would be, I don't know. People's biggest complaint about Helldivers 2 is how the devs were taking everything that we loved and nerfing it into the ground. But that's just not the case anymore. The dev team finally got their head on straight, and I'm not gonna lie, they kind of went crazy. They buffed everything we love back up. I genuinely believe that a lot of people who love Space Marines 2 to death, it's not really love at all. It is a mask for the hatred of what Helldivers 2 became. It was that they hated Helldivers 2 so bad that they wanted Space Marine 2 to be that good. And I'm here today to tell you guys that's just not the case. At least that's not my opinion. Today, I really want to compare and contrast Helldivers 2 with Space Marines 2, because they really are similar in some ways, and also different in some ways. So, as far as similarities go, you fight hordes of two different enemy types to reach and complete an objective as a soldier fighting on multiple different planets, while believing in the narrative that you are the good guys and they are the bad guys. Yeah, when you simplify it like that, these games sound very similar. But that is about where their similarities end. As far as differences go, let's start with Space Marines 2 in terms of content. So Space Marines 2 has a total of 6 operations missions with changeable difficulty. It has a total of 3 different planets. It has a 7 to 9 hour long campaign depending on what difficulty you play on. It also has a PvP mode called Eternal War, but literally no one cares about that. Like, I have not seen a ton of people gush over the PvP mode in this game. It has multiple different armor colors and class perks, and the game has 6 classes in total, all with different ultimate abilities. Now, with everything I just listed, it might seem like there is a ton to do in this game. And there is, in a sense, but I do have a couple of problems with the way it was executed. Number one being the way they designed the difficulty levels. When you begin to take on the higher difficulties, the game is trusting you to be leveling up your perks at the same time. And in turn, that's going to help you stand more of a chance against the higher difficulties. But if you're not, and you're instead buying things like armor colors, it's going to be significantly harder to take on higher difficulties. And you're most likely going to be playing the same missions over and over again on an easier difficulty until you're able to level up your perks. And that can definitely start feeling repetitive very fast. But you may be wondering, what makes the higher difficulties significantly harder? Well, there are a few things. Enemies seem to have a bit more health, even the common ones. And you'll also probably have boss fights more often. But I've got to be honest, those two things wouldn't even be that big of an issue if it weren't for one reason. And that reason is the spawn rate of Medicae stims decreases alongside the higher difficulty you want to play. Meaning the higher difficulty you go, the less Medicae stims will spawn, which makes it significantly harder to heal yourself. Now, in my opinion, a very lazy way to try to make a game feel more difficult is to take away the player's ability to heal. Instead, they could have spawned more enemies, more aggressive enemies, stronger enemies, new types of enemies, or all 4 of those things together. I swear the higher difficulties wouldn't even be a problem if I could heal more often. Now, as I said earlier, there are 6 operator missions you can do. I also mentioned earlier that the game can feel repetitive if you have to do the operator missions on lower difficulty over and over again to earn currency. Well, the feeling of repetitiveness may be inevitable anyway. And that brings me to point number 2. It definitely feels like there could have and should have been way more operator missions than there actually is. Instead, you're left to play the same 6 missions over and over again, with the only thing you're able to change about them being the difficulty. You will always have the same objective. You will follow the same path every time. Yo, if that doesn't sound like a recipe for repetitiveness, I don't know what does. Honestly, this game's content feels very lackluster. I can't lie, I was expecting much more from it at launch. Now let's move on to Helldivers 2 content. As of today, Helldivers 2 has 25 different mission objectives. But since Space Marines 2 is only like 2 weeks old, I'll cut it some slack. But still, at its launch, Helldivers 2 had around 10 to 15 mission objectives, I want to say. Helldivers 2 has over 200 planets. I'll be fair, you can only play on about 8 to 12 of them at any given time. Not only that, but there are 12 environmental conditions across 21 biomes in Helldivers 2. Now, Helldivers 2 does not have an official campaign, but literally no one cares about that. And if you say you do, you're lying. Helldivers 2 has 48 different armor sets. Helldivers 2 has 29 primary weapons. Like, honestly, I could go on about how much more stuff Helldivers 2 has, but do I really need to? Just what I listed off is way more than Space Marines 2 has. I know that one of my complaints about Space Marines 2 is that the missions got very repetitive over time, because you were literally just doing the same thing over and over again, with the only thing changing being the difficulty. But Helldivers 2 does not feel repetitive at all. With everything I just listed, from the mission types, from the weather conditions, to the biomes, in my opinion, it's very hard to make 2 missions feel exactly the same. Not only that, but if we add in the fact of how dynamic Helldiver 2's maps are compared to Space Marine 2, like, I said this earlier, but in Space Marines 2, you are set on a path, you will go on that path because that's the only way to go. And when you're in a mission in Helldivers 2, it just feels so much more free. It really feels like I can move to different places and explore different areas if I want to. You can't do that in Space Marines 2. Now, let's talk gameplay. What does it feel like to play each of these games? Both of these games feel fantastic. I think Helldivers 2 feels better, but we'll get to that. In Space Marines 2, you literally feel like a Hulk ripping through hordes of enemies. And that does feel pretty freaking cool. There's just one thing that they put in this game, and I don't really understand why they did it. What I'm talking about is the parry system. Call me crazy, but I feel like a parry system is way out of place in a horde shooter. Some people might say I like having it than not having it at all. Me personally, I very much disagree. I gotta be honest with you, I wish they had just given us a regular block button. Alright, now let's talk gameplay for Helldivers 2. Now, Helldivers 2 is quite different in terms of feel. I don't feel like a giant Hulk ripping through hordes of enemies. I should probably add most of the time. But there was one thing that Helldivers 2 has over Space Marines 2 that I absolutely adore. And what I'm talking about is, of course, the stratagem system. Yo, I will trade the parry system for the stratagem system any day of the week. I love the stratagem system because they feel awesome to use. And it can make for some pretty funny content when you accidentally blow up your teammates. Honestly, overall, I just think Helldivers 2 feels and plays way better than Space Marines 2. But there is one surefire thing that confirms my belief that Helldivers 2 is a better game than Space Marines 2. And that is the overall player count. Now, just going off the Steam charts, Space Marines 2 has had an all-time peak player count of 186,000, which is not bad at all. It's very respectable even. But Helldivers 2's all-time peak player count was 458,000. In the last 24 hours, Helldivers 2 has had 55,000 players. Space Marine 2, on the other hand, had 83,000 players in the last 24 hours. And that's what kind of confirmed it to me that Space Marine 2 was drastically overhyped after it came out. I'm not gonna lie, bro, before the game came out, I was extremely excited for it. I was hyped, bro, like I was ready. And then it came out and I felt ridiculously underwhelmed. But see, the important thing is you have to understand the context behind the player counts. Space Marines 2 had gameplay and cinematic trailers. They had actual real marketing for their game. Helldivers 2 did not have that. I don't remember seeing a single trailer for Helldivers 2 before the game came out. Helldivers 2 had one of the most impressive organic player growths in a while. And it was because everybody was hyping up this game. Like, it got to the point where big name streamers like Dr. Disrespect and Tim the Tatman literally thought people were being paid to promote the game to them. It spread so far and so fast just on word of mouth alone. That is single-handedly more impressive than any feat from either game I mentioned here today. And what's crazy is that as far as all-time player counts are concerned, Helldivers 2 whoops Space Marine. I mean, they spank them. I can't believe I didn't mention this, not to mention the fact that Helldivers 2 was only like, what, $40? Just for the base game. And then if you wanted the Super Citizen thing, you had to pay an extra 20, but still. Yo, I pre-ordered Space Marine 2 Gold Edition, and I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, that was a bad decision. I got bored. I got bored of that game in the first 5 days. When Helldivers 2 first came out, I was on this game for months. Helldivers 2 literally awoke a feeling inside of me. A feeling that I have not felt since I was a child. This game single-handedly made me have fun as a gamer again. And all those reasons are why I think Helldivers 2 is a superior game to Space Marines 2. Yo, I appreciate everybody who watched to the end. You guys are legends. Even if you disagree with me, hey, that's okay. This is all just opinion. You can like Space Marines 2 more than Helldivers 2 if you want to. That's okay. But guys, if you like this video, please leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and I hope to see all of you guys in the next video.